We're all standing at the bus stop. This bus turns up and it's got absolutely no idea. What kind of person gets on that bus? Not everybody's going to make it. If you have to get a book of how to be an entrepreneur, have a look at yourself. If you're serious about success, if you're serious about development, if you're serious about achieving what you want to achieve, unconscious brain's everything.
What makes a good leader?
We are joined today by Harry Harpur. You're the founder of Square Box Training. What is it?
We're a training company, but we're much more than a training company.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, it sounds a bit arsey, but we're a very straightforward business that focuses on the development of people, and with that, people in their businesses, specialising basically in anything to do with behaviours.
Right.
So our job is to get inside people's heads, get them thinking, help them realise their potential, and then give them tools and techniques to deliver their potential.
Yeah.
And we do that in a very different way.
Why is leadership training so important?
A lot of leaders, first of all, don't identify themselves as leaders. They've been put in a situation, they're working with what we call their raw material. I'm of the school of thought that not everybody, I believe, can be a leader. And that might sound a bit strange from a training point of view, because that's me saying, look, no, certain people will not. But so much of leadership is personality traits. It's also circumstantial. Certainly we can develop leadership qualities already within a person, but there's no one size fits all. So from a leadership point of view, the difference, as I understand it from my point of view, the difference between a leader and a manager, and there's so many differences, but the way I work it is a leader does the right thing, a manager does things right. Okay? So the leader is the person who's got the courage, the balls to go, hold on a minute, that's not the right thing, I'm going to do this. And it hasn't been done before, hence leadership, so they're not following anybody else. The manager does things right. Here's a process, here's what you have to do, and you follow that process. Okay? Now, training leaders is really tricky, because in their own makeup, a leader has that self-belief and confidence. So a lot of leaders who would require training, the amount of, Ireland, Northern Ireland has got a real high percentage of SMEs and people who have gone out and set themselves up, and that's fantastic. How many of those people don't think they need the training? That's the challenge, because those people have got raw material and they've done really well, but how many of them would benefit from, hold on a minute, let's look at your raw material, let's look at where your weaknesses are and start working on them and identifying those, because arrogance has no shape or place in a leader.
Do you think there is like a bit of almost ego
in
in someone who needs to be a leader? Because just what
Huge.
you're saying there, the difference between a leader and a manager is like you're almost saying like a manager is someone who's going to just stick by the rules, where like a leader...
And you know what, that's not necessarily true, but in terms of the leadership and the manager, you can have a fantastic manager who's never going to be a leader.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
and likewise, if you go old school and you look at the likes of people like Richard Branson and people like that, those are people that are fantastic leaders who have openly said, I don't want to be managing people, right?
Yeah.
I'm off doing my thing because I've got ideas and I like being more creative. So a leader has to have a vision. And there's a key. Why should people go on a leadership training session? What I find is a lot of people have a vision, but it's in their head or they can't articulate it. And you can't take people on a journey, which is leadership, unless you've articulated where you're going. It's a bit like us, we live in a part of the world where we've got a crazy bus company down the road who every now and then we see different buses that turn up from all around the world. Imagine you're standing at a bus stop, and you're standing at the bus stop, the bus comes along, and on the bus it's got the destination. Most buses have got destination, would you agree?
Yeah.
Right, so this bus turns up, we're all standing at the bus stop, this bus turns up and it's got absolutely no fucking idea.
Yeah.
What kind of person gets on that bus?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you're a leader of an organisation, you're listening to this right now, not about what you want and what you know. You ask your lowest common denominator, the person who's the newest person in the business, where are we going? And if they don't have a clue, what kind of leader are you? And they don't have to think about it. I have a vision in my business. I'm very confident that anyone in my business is, if they're asked on the spot right now, where's the vision? They know what the vision is.
Does that become difficult in a business? Like, I'm just thinking...
Hugely.
Like
But
if you
no
have
business is
someone,
easy.
if you have someone who's like that leader who has a vision of saying, I'm just thinking of like head of departments or whatever, and they're leading a team, but then they have like the owners, like that person might think, oh, this is what the direction we should go, but then you have the ownership that are like, well, I don't think
Well,
so.
that's a disaster, right? Okay, because it has to be, everybody has to be on the same
But surely
page.
you found that in
Oh,
companies.
loads of
Like,
times,
how do
yeah.
you manage that?
Well, you have to address it. You can't hide it. But how confusing is that for the people who are on the journey?
Yeah.
And that's actually quite a common thing. So in that kind of scenario, what I would be doing is I'd be coming in, working with the owners, working with the managing director if they're different people, and working with what's the common vision, where are we going here, guys? That's the first thing. So when you talk about leadership, vision is absolutely crucial. But not only is vision crucial, self-belief is crucial. You mentioned ego. Ego's different from self-belief. Running your own business, and again for your listeners, like running your own business, you don't need me to say it. I'm living it. It's not easy. I love what I do. I hate cash flow. I hate chasing people for money. It's a complete pain in the ass. I will avoid it like the plague, but that's part of what I have to do. So I have to train, motivate, coach, drive, do all that good stuff, and then I have to do my accounts. And that's the not nice stuff.
Yeah.
But what that does for me is that helps me keep things real. So any penny spent in our business from clients, I know how hard they've had to work.
What are the things like business owners might find challenging about the process?
So you might have, for example, a clear vision for your business, okay? And you might be a rebrand. You might go, we need to take the next step. Now, to take the next step, we work and have worked with professional sports people, coaches, managers, all that kind of good stuff. And that's a tough gig because you've got players who have got you to a certain level in a league, in a division, who, when push comes to shove, are not capable of taking you to the next level. Now, you've got loyalty, and a lot of people will have a loyalty value, but what is it you want vision-wise? Do you want to win? Do you want to make it to the next level? Are you happy where you're at? Those are questions we'll ask. Now, a lot of leaders will say, no, we want the next level, we want the next level. Okay, well, here's a challenge for you. How are you going to get rid of that person?
Yeah.
That's a tough gig.
Yeah.
And that's even tougher if that's your brother or sister or mum.
Yeah.
So suck that up. And that's not through us not trying to develop those people, by the way, and not giving up. But there are some people, we all reach a level.
Yeah.
And if your vision, and you're hungry for your vision, and that's what you want, you have to look and go, who can I bring with me? And that's what we'd call a capability issue. And that's a real tough gig. That's a tough challenge.
That's one thing when you said that. The thing I was thinking is, like, do you just reach your potential, or is there a reason why people just don't go to that?
Some
next
people
level?
don't want it. Some people listen, change. Some people get in a zone and they're comfortable, and that's where they're at. I don't want to have the biggest training company. I want to have the best that I can possibly be and have, but I don't particularly want to have 15 trainers working for me. So maybe I've reached my level. I want to make a difference.
This podcast is sponsored by Smart Mortgages.
Smart Mortgages are dedicated to making your mortgage process simple with fast decisions, honest advice, and solutions that fit your life.
Click the link in the description and take 60 seconds to complete their mortgage readiness quiz. They'll send you a personalised report with advice and guidance that will bring you home. Is there a specific narrative that you're consistently seeing? To me, it almost feels like you'll probably see a lot of people who are tunnel visioned, and they maybe don't see, this person around them maybe isn't.
I've seen people who are too nice.
Yeah.
Who hold on to people who are costing them business. And I've also unfortunately seen those people lose their businesses based on the fact that they weren't able to make the tough calls. So in the face of saving 3 people, they cost 100 people their roles.
Yeah.
And that's tough. That's not leadership.
What makes a good leader?
Oh, I think there's so many things. I think humility. I think obviously we're talking about vision. Okay, so they have to have a clear vision. I think it really comes down to talent, skills, the ability to understand people, to be humble, and to also have that self-belief. And there has to be an element of ruthlessness.
That's the word I was going to say to you.
There has to
you
be.
almost need to have that.
And people quite shy away from that quite a bit. But I think if you're like 95% ruthless, well, good luck with building a team around you if you have the reputation for hire and fire, hire and fire, hire and fire.
Yeah.
And I think in this day and age, with everything else that's going on, you know, the feedback I get now constantly is it's so difficult to find people. People don't want to work. This is quotes that I'm getting from companies, businesses. People aren't hungry enough. The talent isn't there. So we've never been, touch wood, never been so busy because people need to work really hard at creating a business that's exciting, that's interesting, but creating a culture and environment where people want to be part of. That's really tough. And the market out there in terms of the employee, they expect and want a lot, and rightly so, by the way, but it has to work both ways.
I've sort of talked about good leadership and what do you look for in a good leader. And like you've talked about, you know, coming into workplaces and saying maybe you need to let people go. But if you went into workplaces where the leader or like the manager is maybe not the right person and there's like that sort of toxic environment.
This is where, and I hope anyone listening to this is self-reflecting on themselves, but also if they've got a team of people or management team, this is where you need to be really careful, because I would ask people on a training course, has anybody ever had a bad manager? And I also ask them, has anybody ever had a good manager? But it's ultimately, they're a lot quicker to answer the bad manager question. And I'll then say to them, if you have had a bad manager, you've already learned more than ever, because if you're on the receiving end of a bad manager, stroke leader, the damage that can cause, and the amount of people we talk about damage, and is anybody damaged on our training courses? And you know, you don't get to my age without having a bit of damage stroke baggage. We all have. Every experience will bring something to it. The amount of untapped potential, or people that I see that have been prevented from reaching their full potential because somebody somewhere in a position of authority said they couldn't at a time that person was impressionable, that kills me. Absolutely drives me insane.
We talk a lot about obviously the leadership side of things, and you've mentioned a few times there about culture, and culture comes from the top, really.
100%. So we have 3 ingredients for culture. Okay, vision, values, mission. Okay, so there's the 3 ingredients for culture of a business. Now that doesn't mean that if you've got those 3 things, that's your culture, but that's basically your rules of engagement. So here's our vision. This is what we're here to try and achieve. Here are our values, and our values are how we're going to behave. Okay, and our mission is this is what we actually do. Now, if your company, if you're listening to this and you don't have a vision, set of values, or a mission, then please get in touch immediately. We can help you, right? Okay, and we don't tell you what they are. We tease that out, getting an understanding and a feel. Now, if you're one person, we can work with you in one person, because if you have an idea, which is your vision, and we can work with you to develop that, so that when you're at a place, if you need to grow your business, you're attracting like-minded people because you can articulate and you know what it's about. So that's the ingredient. Culture's everything. Culture is the way we do things around here. It's harder to get the right people. 20, 30 years. My first management position, and was a bit of a joke, by the way, because it was on a work placement with my university, was with Marks and Spencer's over nearly 30 years ago. Okay, and I remember getting that gig, and I remember my mum being delighted, and she was delighted because it's Marks and Spencer's, and she literally said, and I remember everybody of a certain age said, that's a job for life. Right, okay. And the mentality 30 years ago, probably not 30 years ago, but certainly of people of a certain generation, was you get a job, you stick in it for life. That mentality isn't here anymore. So that means that employers have to work really hard, but they also have to be realistic that I'm gonna employ you, but you're probably not going to be here forever. And I need to handle that. Now, I have a small business, but we're going since 2000, so we're 24. My first employee still works with me, and she works with me, and I'm very, very fortunate. I'm panicking because at some point she's not going to be working for me, not through anything, but she's going to retire, although I do not want her, and I don't think she's going to be allowed to retire. But she's with me, and I'm dead proud of that because she fits the bill. But it's not an effort because she shares the same values and she's on the same journey.
Yeah.
And actually, she's in certain circumstances more passionate than me, which really makes me laugh.
But like that's a good point, because like I find the place I work's really big in culture, and I find it's even more important. Like with hiring, it's like the people like doing interviews will be chatting like, oh, they'd fit the culture. I think they'd fit in well.
Well, I think culture is one thing. You just pick the vibe up. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's very hard. Again, if you haven't identified your vision, your values, and all that good stuff, it's very hard. And we'll get a lot of people who'll come in and they'll go, well, they're just not us. And my job as a trainer there is to go, hold on a minute, what does us mean? How do we articulate that? Now, how I articulate, so I've got Square Box, we've got our culture, and I can pretty much tell a boxer pretty quick, right? I don't actually try not to recruit trainers, because a trainer's already pre-programmed. I recruit for personality, okay? And then I can train the other stuff, because we're wanting people to be themselves. Because if you have a real person standing up talking about real things, that's authentic. People buy that. I had a real issue at university. I wasn't great at university. I loved it. I loved socialising and going out. But my challenge with university was when a lecturer stood up. Now, remember, I'm 19 at this stage, so where this comes from, I do not know. But when a lecturer used to stand up and talk about what I had to do in terms of this is how the world works, I always had one question. And the question was, can you tell me when you did it? And it wasn't being arsey. It sounds really arsey now, but I had a real problem with that. Now, if that lecturer hadn't done it, I didn't go back to that lecture. Now, I know there's a place for academia, but I struggle at people telling you how to lead when they've never led anything. For example, I'll see I'm in Belfast today and some big poster, nearly crashed my car, thought leaders. And I thought, where are these thought leaders? They've got it out of a book, and that's great, but credibility. And I think that's what you get with Square Box, actually. You get real life experience as opposed to purely learnt out of a book.
Yeah.
That might upset a lot of people. I don't mean to demean anybody, but that's not my market. Yeah. You can go for a off-the-shelf academic course, or you can come in here and know what it's really like.
Does a company's culture change over time in terms of, say, you start off as a small business?
So I think this is where it becomes interesting, because really it starts at the top. Yeah. So you see a lot of businesses, and what I've seen is a lot of businesses where a senior manager comes in as the business grows, senior manager comes in, but the recruitment's been wrong. So the senior managers came in, and they've been recruited because of their experience, but not because of the cultural fit. And then what happens is that person comes in, they've got great experience and they're very talented, but what they're doing is they're just bringing their culture to the business. You'll have heard this, and people listening to this will go, this is the equivalent of, well, when I was at, this is what I did, and when I was at. Now, for the original people who are in the company, they go, well, why the fuck are you still not there, right? Because if it was that good, you wouldn't have left. And a lot of people will bring in people, right? Okay, they will just take what they knew, and it's the same it's the same name above the shop, but it's a totally different company. When I was at Next, for example, Next Vision, when I was at Next, was be M&S, and people laughed at that. Not the people in Next, we were all up for it, but the people outside would go, Next, so small, M&S is legendary, whatever. And that was the focus, that was the goal, and I loved that. But actually, years later, it made me sad, because what Next did was every senior appointment for the next 3-4 years, they just nicked people from M&S. So they might as well just put M&S above. They didn't change the culture. They changed the people, but the people brought their culture with it. Yeah. That's why it's really important. If you're a one-person show, right? People used to laugh at me when I was a one-man show for 4 years. I used to talk about we, and my friends would go, who's we, Harry? It's just you. But I always talked in we, right? Because I never saw it as being one person. And it has to be more than one person. Mm-hmm. So, if you're a one person now who's thinking of and dreaming of, have your vision, have your values, because that's the people then you're going to attract.
It's very thought-provoking when you actually really delve down. I think we could talk for hours here about it, especially us two joining companies and
That's
and
the number
even-
one. That's the number one feedback we get from our courses. Apart from fun, thought provoking.
Yeah.
We're getting inside your head.
Yeah.
Not in
'Cause
a bad way, by the way.
Do you think like something you sort of hear a lot now is like that cliche of like the younger generation, there's no work in them, they don't want to work? What would your experience?
I think
of that
that's
be?
really harsh, right? Okay, because I think it's so easy to do that. I have 3 kids, so I've brought up 3 millennials or whatever generation, what I don't know what we call them, right? And I'm very proud of all 3 of them. They're all doing different things. But there's work in them, maybe not around the house, but there seems to be work in them in terms of if they're motivated and if they're being treated well. And treated well doesn't mean they're getting everything. That's dangerous. You know, I think I see a lot of companies, a lot of leaders who think, oh, the ice cream van comes around on a hot day. Whoopie-doo, right? That doesn't change your culture of your business. Now, if the manager knows my first name, my second name, where I live, my dog's name, right? Okay, that's something about my manager cares, genuinely, as opposed to I can throw money at it. So I think it's really harsh to think that the younger generation, I think the younger generation is more educated, it expects more, you can't treat people the way people were treated 20, 30 years ago, and rightly so, but I think there's plenty of working people, 100%.
Say there's someone listening to this, whether they're looking to improve themselves or they're looking to improve their workforce, what way do they need to be thinking about coming into it?
I suppose the first thing we'll say to people is, I need, for people to get the most out of any development training or any coaching, they have to come with 2 things. The first thing is an open mind. Okay, so you come with an open mind, which dead easy to say, actually really hard to do, because lots of people have had training before, they've read a book, they've seen other people do training, so they're already coming in with unconscious bias. So it's very difficult to go, right, open mind, I'm going to give this a go. So that's the first thing. The second thing is then we want them to have, this will sound a bit weird, an out-of-body experience. And what I mean, non-drink or drug-related, but what I mean by an out-of-body experience is the ability to actually take yourself off and look at you. Sometimes we'll use a visualization exercise. For example, we'll ask them to picture, if you ever see these movies where somebody's lying in their hospital bed and they pass. Not a great image, by the way, but their spirit leaves. And what we're asking you to do is have a look back at yourself without getting emotional, defensive about it, because, you know, it's really tough to be able to, you know, it's a very brave thing to go in and actually go, right, I need to look at myself, I need to develop.
What is like the areas you look at? Like we've sort of talked about like the mindset people need to have coming into it, but like how do you improve? Like what are the areas you look at, whether it be a team of people or individually, to help improve them?
Honestly, every course, every session is bespoke, right? So the typical types of things that we'll get is we have a new business or a new team, okay? So we can work with building that team. And by building that team, we get people to know each other. We do personality profiles. We've got various profiles that people will have heard of before. We've got a fantastic new profile called Print. I'm going into advertising here.
Go on ahead.
Right, so we've got a great new profile called Print, which is, we've got it, we're the only ones who've got it in Ireland. And it really helps identify what your unconscious motivators are, what your potential best self is, and then what your shadow self is. It's a really powerful tool, but that's just one tool of many things that we use. So personality profiles, team management development programs, which is taking a team from the very first scenario, which is building the team, and then equipping the people with the tools and techniques to manage people in a consistent way.
You sort of touched there on like mentioned motivators. Like how important is that, and like understanding like what motivates your workforce? Would that be one of the key things for you?
First of all, very few people actually understand truly what motivates them. You know, the classic answer is money, you know, and what I will argue and say, money is a motivator. Of course, we need money to do things that we like to do, but it's very rarely the number one motivator.
And is there like motivators that are, you feel like from your experience, are maybe overlooked by business owners or people, or is there any that would surprise?
I believe everybody needs a bit of love. I believe everybody needs to feel like they've done a good job. They feel valued. They feel part of something. And I think that's so overlooked. It's frightening, actually. A thanks, a simple thanks and a well done go a long way. Now, that has to be a genuine thanks and well done. The feeling of being part of something is really important.
And how would you recommend like people go about that? I know, like, there's like, oh, thanks, good job, but is there like a more thoughtful way? Or
Well, it's like this. Most businesses that have a workforce have to understand that that is their key asset. Happy people sell, happy people motivate other people. And, you know, it's about understanding each individual, you know, so there's no one size fits all. So we use a concept of understanding people's backstory. Every one of us in this room now has a backstory. You know, I couldn't dream of understanding you, of trying to motivate or manage you until I know and understand your backstory. Now, to get and understand your backstory, that means I'm going to have to communicate with you. I don't send it in an email and go, tell me your backstory, I've been on a course. I'm going to have to invest time in our relationship. And even if I invest time in our relationship, you might be a very shy individual or introverted individual who, you know, has trust issues from previous backgrounds that you're not going to open up just initially. So there's a lot of time and effort goes into understanding, getting to know people, people by people. So from a management point of view, that's what we talk about it, and the emotional intelligence of understanding who people are. And I think also authenticity is key. Can't do bullshit. The amount of people that 3 sessions in will go, Harry, I have to tell you something. And I could write it down what's coming. And it'll be, I failed my 11 plus. Now, these are people who are successful in terms of good businesses, done well. They've reached their potential plus more. But they are actually holding that baggage because they were told at a time and a young period in their life that they couldn't do anything. The damage that causes is frightening.
Can you undo that?
Yeah, 100%. You can pretty much undo everything with an open mind. All we're talking about is reprogramming. Your brain is your biggest, best computer, and you can reprogram that. It's not going to be easy. If you're doing something for 30 years, if you've got a belief, you know, people talk about self-limiting beliefs. So if your belief is, I can't, I don't like, and you've been telling yourself for 30 years that, telling yourself once that you can isn't just going to turn that around. But that's called reprogramming. And that's part of what we do, is giving people tools and techniques to really believe in themselves. We talk about people having hot relationships. Would either of you like a hot relationship? I'm giving secret sauce away. I can't even believe I've used secret sauce because I hate that phrase. But I'm giving a wee bit of a tip away. Hot relationships. Ever heard of it?
No.
Hotter the relationship, the better the team. In fact, you cannot have a relationship, proper relationship, without it being hot. We have a bit of a laugh. This is like a typical thing we would do in a training course. So we'll have 10 people in a room who said, who fancies a hot relationship? And all sorts of things come out of that. But it's not what you may be thinking. So HOT stands for 3 words: honest, open, trusting. They're the 3 fundamentals of any relationship. Now, you look at your relationships, how hot are they? And this is really important because do you have friends?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, if I think you got through life, if I said to you, if you got through life, your whole life, and you're able to go, I have 3 friends that I could depend on no matter what, I think you've left life in a very rich way. You've done really, really well. Now, your real friends don't tell you what you want to hear. They tell you what you need to hear.
Yeah.
And you'll take it from your real friends. You won't like it, maybe, but you'll take it. You'll not fall out with them, maybe temporarily, but you'll take it, and that's because they care for you, and they want you to get the best and be the best. And when you work with Square Box, we're hot. We don't tell you what you want to hear, we tell you what you need to hear. And it takes a brave person to do that, by the way, from a Square Box point of view, because a lot of the time we get brought in and it's the owner or the manager who's the problem. It's not the staff or who needs to change. We'll be the company that says that. Those are the people that write the checks. And there has been times where people have not liked that and the checks don't get written. Doesn't happen that often, by the way. And if it does, that's not the kind of company we would like to work with anyway. Yeah. But that's about being hot. I have a tip just to when you're talking about recruitment. Surround yourself with quality. There's a thing that I've nicknamed the mini-me syndrome, and I see it quite a lot where I go into businesses, I see the owner, and if that's gone well, the owner brings in his or her number 2. Number 2 comes in. They're dressed identically to the owner, right? Okay. And the alarm bells straight away go off. mini me syndrome, right? Okay, and this is very ego based. So a lot of people will interview people. This is all unconscious. They'll interview people and go, that person's good, and they don't go any further than that, right? They don't go, why are they good, right? And if they went further, they go, why are they good? Well, they're good because they remind me of me, and I'm good, so therefore I'm going to take that person on. So you get a lot of people who recruit people who are yes men or women, and okay, and that's really dangerous. You want people in your business that are different from you, because they're bringing something different to the table. Okay, when you and I play football, there are occasions where, you know, everybody wants to be a striker. Okay, and that they all might be great strikers, but that's a car crash because nobody's going to chase back. Don't even say it to me. Okay. And when that happens, we get beat. Simple as that. There has to be a position for everybody. And when people know what their position is and they add value, that's when your culture works. Recruit people who are different in terms of what they do, but similar in terms of their values. So when you interview people, interview for values.
Yeah. You talk a lot about, just as we're sort of wrapping up here, you talk a lot about
we've only just got started.
Unconscious.
I can get going on this.
The unconscious side of things, like for someone listening who's maybe not familiar, it's probably something that you tap
Sounds
into
weird.
in your programs where they're probably going, well, I didn't actually think I thought that, but I actually do. What like, whenever you talk about the unconscious, how can someone become more in tune with that?
Okay, so do you talk to yourselves?
Yeah, all the time.
Okay. Now again, think of the programming that we've been gone through. If you're walking down the street and you're talking to yourself, what do people think?
I'm crazy.
Correct, right? Which is really dangerous actually, because there's lots of studies. Talking to yourself is really healthy and very normal. Okay, so it's really, really important. Now, talking to yourself out loud, unfortunately, culturally wise, in our environment, might be seen as a bit weird. But we've got two parts of the brain. It's obviously got loads of parts of the brain, but I'm only interested in the conscious and the unconscious. So most training courses, most programs that people go on, the tick box training is conscious driven, right? It's like school. So here's what you need to learn. This is what you do. Bang, 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 right? People switch off very, very quickly, okay? Your unconscious brain, right? If you can tap it, as I said before, it's 5 times more powerful, okay? And what I'm doing when I'm telling stories, or any of our guys are telling stories, straight away, the unconscious brain kicks in and goes, oh, this is interesting. That reminds me of something that I was thinking about or talking about. So I've already got you two engaged in this conversation, right? You're not listening to the answers. You're thinking about what you do, okay? The 3-foot rule, your culture, right, okay? You've had a bad manager at some point because you can relate to it, right, okay? Make sense?
Yeah.
That's your unconscious brain, okay? So our skill is tapping that brain, because it doesn't go away. When you leave, you'll be thinking about this. Yeah. You'll be going through that. How many times have you gone on a course or been at a lecture, and by the time you get in the car, you're going, what was that all about? What? But you'll be thinking, okay? Now, this is really important. What's your self-talk like? That's a question for you.
Definitely better than what it would have been. Like.
So we were talking about the football. This is everywhere, Ross, right? Okay. So Ross and I were having a chat about the football. Unfortunately, I am now coming to the end of my playing days, right? Some people will say, I can't believe he's still playing. And does he play, right? But I did the worst thing I possibly did about 6 months ago, where when we were getting ready to play football, I did a survey, right? And I did a survey, and the survey was, what age are you? What age are you? What age are you? The group of lads that we play with, and we've been playing for probably 20 plus years, people in and out. So I worked out, and I wasn't expecting it, I'm the oldest, and that hurt. And my self-talk now goes, you don't have to run as much because you're the oldest. Now that's bad self-talk, right? Okay, I need it. And also the self-talk's going, Harry, it's time you gave up. And maybe it is time I gave up, but I'm still fighting myself. Now, when you've got a problem is when your unconscious brain isn't on the same page as your conscious brain. That's when you've got debate. That's not good. Really healthy people, okay, are in tune, and their unconscious brain wants the same. So, for example, I will go to the gym. Genuinely, I will go for a run, okay? And I will run, and I will come back, and this again for the viewers out there, this should be pretty powerful. How many of you actually do exercise because you like exercise, you want to do it, you want to get a result, lose weight, keep fit, get strong, all that kind of good stuff? How many of you do that? When you come in from the gym, you go, your voice in your head goes, nice one, Harry, get a Twix. Because so many people will do that. They'll do something good, then they will reward themselves with something bad. Now that's crazy. Now you might get away with it at the age you're at. I can't at 52. So I've got the biggest change in my life because I enjoy eating rubbish. But I can't keep going like that because the fitness, you can never out-train a bad diet. So I'm in the process at this moment in time of reprogramming my brain. So when I go for a run now, the last 1K of my run, and I don't run many Ks by the way, but the last 1K, I put the image of a Kit Kat in my head. The last 1K I have to run on the main road here. And that's very deliberate because when I run on that main road, my ego doesn't let me stop, even though I'm dying. And that's the worst time I'm at. It's the most horrible part. I'm putting a Kit Kat image in my head at the worst point, the point that I'm feeling the worst, where everything feels terrible. Why am I putting a Kit Kat in my head then?
To relate it to the bad, like it's a bad thing.
No.
No?
Well, actually, you're right. I'm not doing it for a reward. What I'm doing is, because when I get home and I collapse and then I eventually get up, right, okay, I want the Kit Kat. But what I'm training my brain to do is, so you want the Kit Kat, one stick of Kit Kat, you have to do 5 of those painful runs. And at some point, might take a few months, I go to get the Kit Kat, the unconscious brain goes, not worth it, Harry.
Yeah.
My unconscious brain and conscious brain are now in line. That's called congruency. Now, if you're serious about change, change starts in your head with vision first. But that doesn't mean just because you've got a vision that change happens. That's what Square Box do. We actually really work hard to help you develop tools, to support you, to coach you through. If you're serious about success, if you're serious about development, if you're serious about achieving what you want to achieve, we will go and help you on that process. That's the way it works. Unconscious brain's everything.
Yeah. And is the first step for people almost reaching out, because there is an element of, there's a mental battle there of going, I'm sure there's a lot of people who've listened to this podcast who are business owners, or the idea of...
Can I just say, if you're listening and go, well, if you've listened this far and then go, what a load of bollocks, what a waste of your time, right? That's the first thing. If you're still listening, right, then fair play to you. Even if you think it's a load of bollocks, your unconscious has kept you intrigued. You need to call me.
I think this is, I think the adjective or the narrative of this conversation was thought-provoking. And I definitely will say, I hope there's people listening to this who want to delve into the harder questions, who want to go beyond your standard leadership course, the box ticking exercise. I really do feel like someone, listening to this will see the value. And I think I definitely agree with your point. In order to get to where you want to go, you really need to answer the hard questions and self-reflect.
And I think, hopefully I haven't over-egged the hard stuff, because focus on the end game, right? And the end game is a great place to be. That vision, where you want to be. Imagine being in a place where you've achieved your vision. Nobody's going to give you it. Nobody's going to do it for you. If people are saying, winners win and all this kind of shit, the bottom line is nobody does it for you. You do it yourself. We can help you in a no bullshit kind of way. I think that's our niche in the market, by the way.
I believe there's definitely more topics that we can go into with you, but I think that's a great place to end. Thank you very much for joining us.
No, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.